Hello. Welcome to this ASMR. I will be whispering a true scary story that actually happened. So before we begin, have a moment to sit back or lay down, whatever you like, as long as you are comfortable and relax. Let's begin. When I was younger, I had a great time exploring abandoned buildings, sometimes even cities, small villages. There are a lot here in the neighborhood and the surrounding countries. Some remained after the war, some just abandoned, and a few other places simply empty because of nuclear risk or the coal mine that closed. Each place has a history, and it is very fulfilling to explore that history. And now I will take you to a place in Germany, a place I read about, a hospital deep in the woods, a hospital built in 1898 and rebuilt in 1900. It was a long drive there. I drove through the woods. All I could see was trees, lots of trees. They even took out the view. After a few hours of driving and seeing nothing else but the empty road, a narrow, empty road surrounded by trees. It was even darker there than in the open. It looked ominous, like one of those ghost stories you see on TV or hear about on the radio or read about in newspapers sometimes. After a while, I approach a small clearing. So I stop my car and I take a bit of a moment to have a bite and drink something. It wasn't really the moment to drink a cup of coffee, but I needed it. After the long drive, I needed some caffeine for a boost. And it felt good holding the warm cup in my hands. And cupped, I drank slowly from the hot coffee. I looked around, left, right, nothing I could see, only trees. It was not yet dark, but darker than normal. It was about 6 o'clock, so it was getting dark nonetheless. There was a small path. Slowly, I walked on the path, the gravel cracking beneath my shoes. and I slowly walk across the gravel and make a small turn at the end of a small road. And there, through the trees, I was being watched, not by a person, but a towering building with one window shaped like an eye looking down on me. The entire place looked scary, creepy. A place no one would venture out at night. But I knew I was at the right place. But the time wasn't right yet. So I decided to go back to my car, gather a few of my belongings, flashlight, some batteries, and a small knapsack, because I wanted a snack further down the road. I checked if I had enough to drink, and I decided to add another bottle of water to what I already had in my bag. I slowly walked back down the trail, the gravel still cracking beneath my shoes. And I took the time to look around. There was not much of a sound to be heard. All was quiet, too quiet even. It was a forest, so there should be sounds, but I heard none. It was all quiet. I walked around for about an hour, and it was starting to get cold and dark. So that was a moment I decided to go back to the hospital. I saw small clouds leaving my mouth as a sign that it was getting colder and colder. The sounds of nighttime started to awaken. Small cracks of branches, like someone broke a twig. So I knew the night creatures had awakened. But I approached the house. The building stood in front of me. From left to right, one huge hospital. Everywhere I looked, all windows were broken. Like something happened that broke them all at once. I used my flashlight to look around the place. And at the side of one of the windows, I noticed a small board with a hole in it. I carefully walked over to the hole, used the flashlight to look inside, and I could see a large hallway. So I decided to step through the hole and enter the hospital. The place I ended up in was the entrance where people would get ready to be checked in. The register's office was on the left, and on the 3 other sides you could see hallways. Long hallways. Here and there you saw doors laying across the hallways, as some powerful animal had raged through the hall. But the building was abandoned for many years now. There was a distinctive smell in the hospital. No longer that hospital smell, but the smell of old places. A dark smell. As I ventured through the rooms, I saw some remaining beds, mouth caps, doctor's gowns, part of nurses' gowns, part of papers that were still there. Were not really papers that were being used, but more like the papers used for flyers. I also noticed at the back of one of the hallways a huge mattress covered with something dark, like something rotted on it. There was writing above it on the wall. Is this blood yours or mine? Probably someone's joke, because looking closer, it did not resemble blood, but more like paint. I went further down the hallway, and I ended up in a room all empty, but one thing in the middle of the room as a centerpiece, a piece of attention. It looked like a cage for an animal or a human. It was big, not high, but just big. As I looked around the room, I saw a window, and I knew what the place was. The place is where you can have X-rays being taken, and the window was from a shielded wall that would protect the one behind it from the X-rays. I went out the room, and I went further down the hospital. And I went to the basement level. There was a distinctive odor, a bad odor. It really smelled awful there. The basement probably was used to store medication, chemicals, and over the years, probably they decayed, giving off this smell. I took a piece of cloth and held it in front of my mouth and nose to protect me a bit from the foul odor. I went further just a bit, but I noticed the air becoming thinner and thinner, and I felt a bit lightheaded. I knew this was not the right place to be, and I turned back. As I went out the basement, I felt better, relieved. Slowly, I walked through the other rooms, careful not to make any sound. This was the best thing I could do, so I tried the fox walk, and it really helped to stay quiet. I was in a part of the building that still seemed okay in a way that you could not live there, but there was no bad smell, or at least not that much, more like the smell you would imagine being there, but not distinctive. In one of the rooms, I noticed a small bag. Well, small. It looked small in the beginning, but when I approached, it was a blanket. And definitely a blanket of someone living there. Just imagine having to live in a place like that. People have to sometimes because of circumstances. Sometimes they have nowhere else to go, no one to turn to. It is sad to know that people have to live in a place like that. No one they can turn to, no one that can help them. I keep walking, and I notice that although I do not make a sound, I hear footsteps. They are far away, but not too far. So I decided it was best I would be on my way back out. I slowly turned around and walked back the way I came, to the entrance. I kept hearing the footsteps, but I did not see anyone. And I went through the hall that I used to get inside the hospital. And I kept walking quiet to my car. One peek, I turned on the building, and I could see a person standing inside the room. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a female, because the person did not use any light, and there was no light in the building. But the person stood there until I left. I slowly went in my car, turned on the ignition, and drove away quietly.